So Evan Williams, welcome. I'm Kris Tjornehoj from the University of Wisconsin River Falls, and it is my honor to have this interview and this time with you to talk about you, your music, and just kind of capture the essence of what you are doing as far as making a difference in our world musically. So
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you so much.
So what does it mean to you to be the 55th composer in the longest running commissioned composer project at any university in the United States of America?
Well, it's a huge honor. So when I was asked to take this on, I was given a partial list of some of the previous composers, and it was a really prestigious, group to be a part of. So I was honored to be a part of this long lineage of new music happening in Wisconsin, and it's Wisconsin is a place that's close to me. I went to school there, and I also taught there for a year. So it's sad that I couldn't be back in person and be back in Wisconsin in person, but it meant a lot to be a part of this.
We hope to get you here in person somehow, sometime, because
Hmm.
half of the joy of working with the composer is getting inside their head, getting to know them, and our students get to own that experience.
Definitely.
I've been teaching at the university over 25 years, 28, I believe. And if somebody, you keep in touch with all of your alums and everything like that. And I'll say, well, who's your composer? Or what
Hmm.
piece did you play? Or
Hmm.
what tour did we go on? And then I can kind of regroup where we were and what we did. So
Awesome.
it becomes part of our tapestry. It becomes
Hmm.
part of our fabric. And so we will be getting to that because I do want to do some of your music. I am a wind band conductor,
Hmm.
and I conduct the orchestra here as well, St. Croix Valley Symphony Orchestra. I am a saxophone player and a pianist. And yet what I do is I'm always motivating groups and doing camps and guest conducting. And so we have to get one of your pieces at my next gig. So we'll
That would be
get into
great.
some of that
Yeah,
afterwards.
definitely.
So that's pretty cool. What I'd like to do is I would like to ask you just a few questions because I think composers are obviously musicians first,
Hmm.
and yet they have a bountiful art of creativity. You have to have diligence, tenacity, and respectability to make it as a composer. What is the purpose that drives you into this act of composition?
Great question. Well, for me, just the moment I was first exposed to just orchestral music, which actually wasn't through, standard classical music, but through film, I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the idea of creation through music, and I wanted to do it since I was a young kid, and so it's always felt like something I needed to do as a human, because to express myself in this musical way, and so really it's I don't really believe in any sort of mysticism or anything, but there is a strong pull for me to create, especially music. And so, the way I do this is really inspired by the world around me, by the things happening in our world, and in history too. And I respond to those things through music.
Fantastic. And your attention to the world that surrounds you is what makes you so rich. And we are celebrating that here at the university. You've managed to have a lifestyle of being a professor
Hmm.
and working in personal composition. That's very difficult to
Yeah.
juggle.
Yeah.
And yet we all know that you have to be a portfolio employee in this world to make it anymore. There was a day and age, if you will, where perhaps even in other countries, where if you were a composer, you would get the stipend from the government. Well, we don't have any of that. So
Hmm.
you have to work, and so
Hmm.
you have to juggle. How do you balance your professional life and your personal life and this absolute desire and pull to create as a composer?
Well, it's really hard, and I haven't really found the balance yet. I feel so. I'm in my third year in my first tenure track job, and to be truthful, rarely do I work on pieces during the semester. It's just a lot of work. Like you, I'm also a conductor. I conduct our orchestra and wind ensemble here at Rhodes, in addition to teaching composition and music technology. And so often just, with all my duties as a professor, I just don't have the creative energy to write during the semester. But what that means is during, winter and summer break, I'm just ready to go. In fact, we're in finals week now, and I've already started writing some stuff because now that I have a little bit more time. And so I really protect my summers for creative work. I don't take any summer teaching jobs or anything like that. I just write, and then you also, relax during the summer. And so that's what's really helped. But hopefully in a few years or so, I'll find the right balance that I could also be able to do some work during the year, because I tell my teachers to keep up. I tell my students to maintain a regular work schedule. So I should do that too. But it's just so hard when you do have another job, as a professor.
It's very difficult. So we're impressed with your output thus far, and we're going to get to the composition you did for us pretty soon. But when you talk about all the things that you've done, I did do some research. It's so great with the internet to be able to find out what pieces you're doing, what the orchestra's doing, and you're inspiring me to switch it up a little bit. By the way, I'm just going to say, and you had made a comment with the students when we had the premiere of Sound the Alarm, and it was that you never were exposed to music of a variety in your undergraduate work.
Yeah.
And I am happy to announce that that is not how we do it here at the
Good.
university.
Amazing.
Part of it could be because everybody is such a varied, interested individual as professors that we all come together with this annual commission composer project, and it's expanded everyone's horizons.
Great.
And so it's wonderful that we do lots of music that represents any kind of composer.
Mm-hmm. That's so important.
So we celebrate that with you today. But would you share what you would consider your, if you will, if we had to do the epitaph, your two or three personal highlights in your career? And I'm not going to say it has to be as a composer, so I'm just going to say in your career as a musician.
Oh goodness, that's hard to think about. Oh, you're really putting me on the spot here.
I almost emailed you my questions ahead of time.
Yeah.
And then I thought, it's much more fun when they're fresh.
Yeah. We'll edit this as I think a little bit, but let's see. So I have one, and then let's think of the other one. Okay, I got them. So I would say the first was my first symphony orchestra commission. So when I was a doctoral student at CCM, University of Cincinnati, they started a new program where the Cincinnati Symphony commissioned one of the students, composition students at CCM, to write a short work for their young people's concert series. And throughout that work, they asked school children throughout the area to write melodies that I incorporated into the piece. And so I got to work with those students and, talk about how I'm using their melodies. And then I had a great premiere with the Cincinnati Symphony with about 3,000 kids from around the Cincinnati area. So that was a beautiful moment for me. One of the fun parts was the rehearsal for my piece happened on my birthday. So my parents came to Cincinnati and they came to the rehearsal, and the conductor found out it was my birthday, and I came on stage and conducted the orchestra as they played Happy Birthday to me, but they all played it in whatever key they wanted. And so that was a beautiful sort of Charles Ivesian moment for me. So that was great. I would have to say, the second most important moment of my career, and now I've forgotten that. Wow. Well, I had it and now it's going. Hold on 1 second. So it's going to do Cincinnati Symphony. Oh wow, I'm so sorry. Should have wrote this down. So Cincinnati Symphony, and then I was going to talk about what after that. Oh yes, okay, sorry. So let me restart that thought. So the second most important moment actually wasn't as a composer. It was as a conductor, and really not even conducting. So my first concert here at Rhodes, uh, we called it classics, and so we played things like Holst and Mozart, but we ended the concert on Terry Riley's NC. And you know, it is a classic of the repertoire. It was written, you know, in the 60s, and it has become a very seminal piece in music. And I played the keyboard, and we had one of my colleagues do live video processing throughout the concert, and we also had a student do lighting work throughout the concert, and it was just an incredible experience. Uh, some of my favorite music making that I've ever done, playing NC with my students at my first year at Rhodes. So that would be my two most important musical moments.
Fantastic.
Sorry about
No,
my
no,
brain
no.
fart. I
Hey,
don't know.
it's quite
It's
all right.
finals week. I guess my brain decided no more thinking.
All good. So I want to go back on that just a little bit. So when you're programming, you are programming a wide variety of music, and yet you're looking at your colleagues and looking at their skills, because this idea of bringing the technology, well, let's do this, the COVID button. All right, how did I do? All right, so we've got the COVID reset going, and we're all doing it, but you were doing it 3 years ago. So let's talk about that, because I absolutely love the idea of a lighting expert going ahead and moving around and having that freedom. And then you said that you also had live video processing. Can you dig a little deeper and share with me, like, how, I mean, and where can I watch that?
Yeah, so yeah, you can watch that online. If you, my colleague who did the work is a art professor here at Rhodes, Carl Erickson, and so if you go to his Vimeo, Rhodes NC is one of his videos, and it was a amazing performance. And in fact, we were very honored this year to be selected as semifinalists for the American Prize in collegiate orchestral performance for that performance. So I'm very proud of the work we did there. Part of the challenge, but also that makes things interesting of being at a small liberal arts college is that we don't have a full symphony. So, you know, we can't really do the big, you know, Brahms and Beethoven symphonies that, you know, you would normally play as an undergraduate in orchestra. So I had to be a little bit more creative with the rep I choose. And so often I will choose an open instrumentation piece because so we could do symphonies, especially like Haydn and Mozart that have two on a part, but sometimes I have like saxophone players and tuba players and stuff like that, and I have to find something to do for them. And so often every concert will have at least one open instrumentation work where everyone can come and play together, and that also teaches things like improvisation and listening and all kinds of skills that are going to be useful as a musician. So even though they're not learning those big seminal works of classical music, they are learning other skills that are going to help them as musicians.
Sounds fantastic. And it does not sound like it's very different from what we do here at the University of Wisconsin River Falls, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's some similarities. And as far as your wind band goes, that is what you have the most background in, correct?
Yes,
As a
yes.
performer.
So I'm a trombonist, and so I started my musical career like a lot of kids, fifth grade band, playing trombone. And then toward high school, I was in a youth symphony, and then a couple years in college, I played an orchestra. But my chief training is in wind band music. I studied wind band conducting with our professor Andrew Mast at Lawrence University, and so that's what I know the best. But also deep lover of orchestral music, and so but there's some things like I'm learning on the fly, like bowings. What's the best bowings and stuff like that. So but um my chief work comes from band. So what's interesting is we don't have two separate groups. It's one group, orchestra, and one ensemble. And so what we do is often we'll play a couple of string works, we'll play a couple of wind ensemble works if we have the full winds to do it, or chamber wind ensemble works, and then we'll come together for some larger piece like maybe a symphony or open instrumentation work.
Yes, and the open instrumentation work again, once again, thank you, COVID, Rainbow. We're all doing it.
Yes,
We're
yeah,
all doing it now,
yeah,
and it should have been done years in advance.
yeah.
But this wonderful instrumentation, I actually commissioned Anthony O'Tua. I don't know if you know him.
Not familiar, but
Anyways, he's an Indiana University of
oh,
Pennsylvania grad
great.
who's now in film music is his bread and butter. But by the way, you should look it up because he
Will
does a
do.
lot of evaluations of regular wind band works from a
Mm-hmm.
theory composition standpoint. So that's his fun. He loves that, and he does analysis, and he makes those available to conductors.
Cool.
So I commissioned a piece called Frenetico, and I said, all right, 6 parts. And then, then Jack Stamp got in on this, and he's like,
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you one with 5 parts. I'm like, fine, 5 parts,
Mm-hmm.
6
Mm-hmm.
parts. Do I hear 7? Then the Boston Brass, Jeff, they're all friends of mine, and they're like, well, we've got some pieces. We're gonna make those into. So my repertoire this year has been absolutely rich with open
Awesome.
instrumentation, and
Mm-hmm.
yet until COVID, I did not use a single person or any of that kind of unique stuff. So when you say open instrumentation, I'm all over it now. And I think that our students will make better teachers because
Yeah.
they're going to be in situations where the open instrumentation not only challenges them, but then everybody can learn all the parts just like a
Exactly.
beautiful string quartet. Why are
Exactly.
string quartets like the icon? They all learn each other's part.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
think that we as teachers, it's just been, many blessings through the challenges.
Yeah. And what's been great for me is the adaptable, pieces. For at Rhodes, oftentimes I would be arranging part. Like it's actually very funny. So last year we were going to play Frank Kelly's Simple Gifts, and I had to arrange several parts for flutes to play clarinet parts because we only had one clarinetist, but 8 flutes, and so I was arranging for flutes to play clarinet parts and stuff like that. And then this year he came out with the adaptable version, which we played, and I was like, I wish I had that last year.
Yes, so we're on to something new here, and
Mhm.
it obviously serves you well as a college conductor, and I'm sure there's many others, and
Mhm.
myself included. So it's a beautiful thing. So getting into our composition for this year, it's a reflection to me of a cry for social justice.
Mhm.
What was your reaction after hearing the final product? And let's talk about that work just a little.
Yeah, so it was. I was so proud of the work that all the students did on this piece. It wasn't. It's not easy, both from a technical standpoint and from an emotional standpoint. So this piece comes from a lot of years of pain and just seeing what's been happening, in the news and feeling sort of helpless. But 2020 sort of. Seemed to be a shift. Often there is a public outcry and protest about, killings of unarmed Black and Brown people. But this year, it seemed like it wasn't just Black Lives Matter out there protesting, but our government leaders, celebrities and companies saying, "Hey, we recognize the value and dignity of Black lives, and this has to stop." And as we know, rarely do we get guilty verdicts in trials like this, and the fact that we had that sort of signals that some kind of shift has happened in our culture, that we're no longer willing to accept the sacrifice of Black lives, for the difficulty of policing. And I respect policing and that it's a difficult job and that their safety is important. But too often that comes at the expense of unarmed people being killed for no reason. And so that the piece was both sort of a cry, uh, uh, for justice and anger of what's been happening, but also at the end you hear that there is a sense of hope that perhaps we shall overcome, and I use that theme in the end, and perhaps there is hope for us to finally move past this chapter into a more just society.
And it came through in the music. And so just to recapture, you used sirens, you had aleatoric sounds for the saxophones, you had percussions doing multiple things, and it was 8 people. So this instrumentation is going to lend itself to I think a beautiful life, especially now. And yet we had the commission before the George Floyd incident. And it was, yes, it's very close to our home. We consider ourselves Twin Cities, even though we might be in River Falls, Wisconsin. And because we are literally 30 minutes away. And so we being a part of this whole circle and having this happen in our backyard, very difficult times. And I do too think that we've made history across the world, and now things will get better.
Yes. And what's an interesting thing about this piece is that I originally conceived of it around like 2014 as a percussion ensemble piece. And the catalyst then was Tamir Rice when I was living in Ohio. That really affected me. Such a young child was killed for having a toy gun in an open carry state in Ohio. And so it's sort of sad that it's still so relevant today. But in terms of the instrumentation, that inspiration came from seeing a lot of pieces for string quartet and percussion on quartet, which sounds cool, but it's like, well, string, percussion, if you want really loud, bombastic percussion, the strings aren't going to hold up against that unless they're amplified. But I love saxophone, and it's funny, I'm a trombonist originally, but I've just been sort of embraced by saxophonists, and I have a number of saxophone pieces. And I knew, that's a great, combination, the sax quartet and the percussion quartet. And so that's sort of how that instrumentation evolved over the years.
Well, it's got power, sir. And we are just honored that this was a part of our commissioned composer project. And so then that leads me to my next thought, and that is, how are we going to change our programming to reflect variety, integrity, social justice, and the responsibility that we have as professors, teachers, leaders all across the world? How are we going to do this?
I like especially that you said integrity, because the solution that a lot of people have sort of taken on these days is just a quota system. Is that, okay, I've got one of each, I've got a female, I got a person of color, and then we can play Brahms, and it's just checking off the boxes until you have it. And that's not really what it's about. It's not about a percentage. It's not about a certain amount. It's about active engagement with the work of a composer that you feel has a voice that you want to share with your audience. And so it's really important that we don't engage in tokenism, that we engaged with actual active work with a composer. And one example is, often, any Black composer can tell you this, our email boxes are more full in February than any other month of the year. And I've actually taken on a policy that I often will say, yes, you can play a piece of mine on your Black History concert in February, but I also need you to program it in another month of the year as well, because I want you to engage more deeply with my work than just as a token in February, because I do recognize the importance of, recognizing Black achievement in February and women's achievement in March. But I don't want then that, you never think about our work in any other time of the year. So that's very important to me, is deep engagement rather than just ticking off the boxes.
And I agree with that wholeheartedly. And now you're going to be even in a, if you will, more prolific position with this piece of music, sound the alarm, to, I think, make this happen and to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So somehow we have to get this out, and that's part of the reason we do an interview,
Mm-hmm.
and we share it with people, and we get it on Facebook pages and social media. Is there another work that speaks to you that you have either composed or that you have done on a recurring basis, like the NC of Terry
Mm-hmm.
Riley? Is there another piece of music that really is a statement of your identity?
Yeah, so if I do have a piece that is a statement of who I am as a composer, it's my recent harpsichord concerto called "Dead White Man Music," and that title sometimes puts people off because it's very blunt. But as we were discussing earlier, when I was an undergraduate composer, I never studied or performed the music of a work of a person of color, except for in jazz band. I, played work by
Sure.
Black composers in jazz band. But in my time in wind ensemble, symphonic band, orchestra, chorus, I only played two works by women. All the rest were by white males, and specifically dead white male Europeans. And so, when we study the canon of classical music, your Mozart, Beethoven, Brahms, all that stuff, we are really just studying the music of dead white guys, and that's great. I love that music. It's fantastic. It's some of the reasons why I do what I do is because I love that music so much. But that can't be it. There are even not thinking about just composers today, but throughout history, there have been composers of color and women who have made great contributions to music, and that we need to recognize those contributions and celebrate them and expose our audiences to them. And so this piece, Dead White Man Music, is sort of a conflict really between my ideas of what we should be doing in music and what it has been happening, but also just an internal struggle about who I am as a composer and who should be the models I look at. So you have influence from Bach and Dowland and Sibelius and folks like that on one end, but on the other end you have Julius Eastman and Nina Simone and hip hop, and so it really sort of encapsulates who I am and how I think as a composer.
Well, I think it's wonderful. I think it's intriguing. I think it's timely, and we feel very blessed that it just the stars lined up with you being, and we thank Patty Cudd for that, because it's her insight that makes this whole project continue on.
Yes.
And so I'm so grateful for your time and your energy and for your mission. And if I can be one who puts some of this stuff together, I do have a couple magazines that I write for,
Awesome.
and I will be in contact with you to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that you feel like your voice was properly heard before I would ever publicize this. But
Sure.
I want to be the one to help promote our wonderful world and how to be the best teachers, conductors, and mentors in the industry of music, because the music is the art that represents our society.
Yes. Thank you so much. That means a lot.
So thank you for your time today. It's been an absolute honor for us to work with you. And I look forward to future collaborations and keeping the charge as we keep
Yes.
music first and foremost in our world.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.